to another edition of Thunderdome. This is part 3 of chapter 6 in unit 5. Does that make sense? No. But stick with me. Alright, so we've reached the part where we talk about how we can't trust our own memories. Now, do we lie to ourselves and say that our memories are perfect? Sure, why not? That's called cognitive dissonance. But there's been tons of research saying that memories really, truly can't be trusted because the moment you remember them incorrectly, that is how it is going to continue to be remembered. That's why eyewitness testimony is not exactly the same thing that it once was. So we have a psychologist, Elizabeth Loftus, studied imperfect memories pretty much, but really went into research when it comes to eyewitness testimony and memory distortions. So she comes up with this thing called the misinformation effect. So a memory distortion phenomenon in which a person's existing memories can be altered if the person is exposed to misleading information. Who is really good at misleading people to get the answers that they possibly want? Lawyers. Okay? They're trained to do that. So she did this amazing study where she used estimated speeds of a car crash and used different words for each one of these speeds. So the word used in the question when it was smashed, people said 41 miles per hour. Collided, 39, bumped, 38, hit, 34, and contacted, 32. Now, that's almost like, you've probably heard this possibly on Law and Order or some show or whatever, but you know, objection, leading the witness. Okay, yes, this is leading the witness, but they're doing it in such a nonchalant way that they can get away with it, and they can decrease the miles per hour just by using verbiage, okay? So that's one thing that she studied and did research on, eyewitness to car accidents. Source confusion and false memories go along with this. So a memory distortion that occurs when the true source of the memory is forgotten, so you don't know where this information came from. And, you know, this happened to Brian Williams. Okay, a news anchor, he got fired for kind of fabricating a story that he was possibly involved in. I think he was saying that he was involved in a helicopter crash in the Middle East somewhere and all that kind of stuff. And then it came out to where he was not. Okay, he covered tons of stories like that, but never truly experienced it himself. And he was let go or moved to a different position by NBC. Because there's one thing that you need your nightly news anchor to be, and that happens to be trustworthy. So he says right here, in the midst of a career spent covering and consuming news, it has become painfully apparent to me that I am presently too much a part of the news due to my actions. And that was his parting statement. But he experienced source confusion. False memories, a distorted or fabricated recollection of something that did not actually occur. Meaning, you know, the actual event didn't occur at all for him or anybody else. Okay, that's what a false memory would be. All right, so schemas, scripts, and memory distortions. So this can have some sort of effect on how we remember things because maybe we're filling in the blanks. And as a human, that's what we do. Okay, we truly fill in the blanks. It's actually, it's pivotal, you know, talking about evolutionarily speaking, for our survival. The more we can fill in the blanks, the better and easier survival ends up happening. So, schema, an organized cluster of information about a particular topic. So we got objects, settings, and concepts. So your schema of phone has changed over time to include fashion, flirting, games, wireless, photos, text messages, apps, all that kind of stuff. For you, maybe not so much, right? I mean, because you guys have always grown up with smartphones. But for me, the first phone that I ever used, it was like this, right? A rotary phone. And then now, a phone, I don't even call it, I mean, I don't call people necessarily on my phone anymore. You know, I use it to become TikTok famous. A version of schema that really messes with our memory is a script. So a schema for the typical sequence of an everyday event. So at a restaurant, think about it. What are your usual processes of, okay, what happens at a restaurant? You get sat, right? You go to the hostess, you get sat, kind of get your drinks, come back, do you want any apps? All right, we'll put the apps in. When I come back, you know, we're going to, hopefully you'll be ready to order food. You order food, right? And then you get dessert, then you get your check, and somebody goes to the bathroom because they don't want to pay, and then you leave. So that's the script, right? That's what we think about possibly when we're in a restaurant. Now, imagine if one of those things didn't happen. But they've happened so many times, and you know, in so many different ways and places and all that kind of stuff that has happened just like that. Then the one time it doesn't, then you're asked to remember it. Will you fill in the blanks possibly incorrectly? Yeah. All right. So the way we have set things up in our, you know, mental processes and how we remember things, really, I'm telling you that, you know, the more and more that I teach this and the more and more that I read about it, you know, it's kind of scary to trust your own memory. But sad thing is, that's all we got. So we have to. So although useful, schemas can contribute to memory distortions. Inconsistency with already formed schemas can cause this to happen. So this is a false memory experiment that happened in a college setting. So, you know, first of all, when you go to college and take general psych, you're going to be required to have about 9 hours of experimental research to get an A. So they'll ask you, okay, you need to sign up or volunteer to be a part of these experiments. And they're not crazy or anything like that, but this is an example of one of those experiments. So after briefly waiting in the psychology professor's office shown below, which is really right here, participants were taken to another room and asked to recall details of the office. The real purpose of the study is just recall. We want to see what you can think about, what you can remember about this office right here. So many participants falsely remembered objects that were not actually in the office, such as books, filing cabinet, telephone, lamp, pens, pencils, coffee cup. Why? Because that's the stuff that should be in the office. Okay? So the details that the participants erroneously remembered were all items that would be consistent with a typical professor's office. Schemas can cause memory errors by prompting us to fill in missing details with the schema-consistent information. All right, forming false memories. This is always an interesting one to talk about because a lot of people have experienced this at some point in their life. So there's this thing called imagination inflation. So a phenomenon in which vividly imagining an event increases confidence that the event actually occurred. So you have this story in your mind, you think it happened, you can put yourself in there, you can create this vivid imagery in your mind about the actual experience, and it is now created as a memory in your mind, not just your imagination. So, the lost in the shopping mall. A lot of people remember this happening to them, right? I mean, maybe possibly you have been told the story that you've been lost in Target, you were lost in Harris Teeter, you were lost in Walmart, you couldn't find, you were searching around the hall, the aisles, you know, people got on the intercom and said, we got a missing child up here, his name's Gregory, please, his mom needs to come up here. That can be completely false. You know why? Because you've heard that story so much, and that could have actually happened, but maybe to one of your friends, and maybe to one of your siblings. Not necessarily you, but you have thought about it, and thought about yourself in this position, and you have created imagination inflation, which is just a complete fabrication. So imagining the past as different as how it actually happened can change the memory. So repeatedly imagining the event makes it seem familiar. After familiarity, source confusion can take place, so you can't remember where you learned this material or where it came from. And then the more detailed and vivid the imagined event, the more they will confuse it with a real life occurrence. And then eventually it becomes a real life occurrence for you. So anybody who actually thinks that they got lost in a shopping mall, there might be a slight chance that they did not. All right, so here's all of the factors contributing to false memories in one place. It's a good place to study for the test. But all the terms are here and good examples as well. Okay, so the search for the biological basis of memory. So what is memory in the brain? Very interesting research, and it's still being done. Okay, so Carl Lashley, one of the guys that we're going to study here, he has this idea about where memory is actually stored. So he attempted to find the specific brain location of particular memories. So he began by using the memory trace. He called it an engram, but that's the actual neural change in the brain. Okay, so the brain changes that were presumed to occur in forming a long-term memory. Guiding Lashley's research was his belief that memory was localized, actually in certain places in the brain for certain things. So a particular memory was stored in a specific brain area. So here's his experiment. Rats learned to run a maze. Then he started removing parts of the rat's cerebral cortex. Rats could still complete the maze. After experimenting over the course of 30 years, he came up with the conclusion that memories are not localized in specific locations, but are instead distributed or stored throughout the brain, as in your gray matter, right, the wrinkly, outer cortex of your brain. He was wrong, but not totally. Okay? Some memories do seem to be localized in specific spots in the brain. There's a problem with his research. The task was too difficult, too complex. The entire brain was being used, not just one small part of it. So he could never find the localized part because this task, running the maze, used almost, all of the rat's brain. So here comes Richard F. Thompson, which this man's got some sick hair. American psychologist and neuroscientist who conducted extensive research in the neurobiological foundations of learning and memory. So he does some other tests. Thompson classically conditioned rabbits to perform a very simple behavior, an eye blink. And that's pretty easy to do. I could do it to you. Okay? If I had enough time, I would play a tone, maybe a bonk. And then I'd blow into your eye. And I'd do it again. And I'd blow into your eye. And again, and again, and again, and again. And that is called acquisition. And then all of a sudden, I stop blowing in your eye. And all you hear is the bonk. Guess what you do? You blink. Okay? And I know some of you are like, I'm above that. That would never happen to me. No, it would happen to you. All right, if you gave me enough time. So he does this to a rabbit, which isn't going to take that much time. So Thompson discovered that after the rabbit had learned this simple behavior, there was a change in the brain activity in a small area of the rabbit's cerebellum, right? So right back here. The lower brain structure involved in physical movements. When this tiny area of the cerebellum was removed, the rabbit's memory of the learned response disappeared. It no longer blinked at the sound of the bonk. However, the puff of air still caused the rabbit to blink reflexively, so the reflex itself had not been destroyed. It was just the learned memory. So, thanks to Lashley and Thompson, we know that memory is both localized and distributed. It's only localized if it's a simple enough task, and it is distributed if it is a complex task. Okay. This is one of my favorite slides I've ever created because of one sentence. All right? Tell me when you think that I say it. Some change must occur in the workings of the brain when a long-term memory is stored. Enter aplesia, a gentle seaweed-munching sea snail off the coast of the California coast. So why is aplesia so cool? It only has 20,000 neurons, and they're huge. And so they can be studied extensively. I mean, you don't have to really, you could use a regular microscope to see some of these things. I mean, like, it's right there in front of you. Now, for us, we have billions of, 100 billion neurons in our brain. So we're going to pick something that has huge neurons that we can actually manipulate and watch it learn. So what happens here is a plesia is repeatedly squirted with water, and each squirt is followed by a mild shock to its tail. The snail learns to withdraw its gill flap if squirted with water, and it kind of goes into this protective mode. Okay? And then conditioning leads to a structural and functional change in the 3 neurons involved in the memory circuit, which is right here. So again, their neurons are huge. This guy, Eric Kandel, American neurobiologist, born in Austria, won a Nobel Prize in 2000 for his work, and basically found that long-term potentiation, long-lasting increases in synaptic strength between 2 neurons occur when you learn something. And that's how you strengthen memory, okay? You know, you think about the things that you've done for your entire life and how strong those neural connections could possibly be if you continue to actually do them. I like to think about writing when I think about this. So it is something you learned, right? You never have to think about the first time that you ever learned to write every single time that you write, okay? And you've experienced LTP, long-term potentiation right here. Those neurons have been used so much possibly in your life that, you know, they are strong. They would never go away, right? I mean, that's, again, implicit memories, like riding a bike, learning how to drive a stick shift, writing, making scrambled eggs even, anything like that. Reading sheet music, just like Clive Waring. All of that stuff could be, you know, so strong that it can't be taken away by something crazy like your hippocampus being destroyed. So yeah, a gentle seaweed munching sea snail off the coast of the California coast. All right. Processing memories in the brain. So there's something that you definitely have heard of, and we just watched a little bit of it. But amnesia, so severe memory loss. We have retrograde and anterograde amnesia. So retrograde is probably what you've kind of always thought of amnesia being in the first place. Loss of memory, especially for episodic information, things that have happened to you, is also called backward acting amnesia. But for us, we're going to call it retrograde. So not being able to remember the past. It can be permanent, it can be temporary, but it's usually temporary, okay? So if memory consolidation, the gradual physical processes of converting new long-term memories to stable, enduring memory code is disrupted before the process of memory is complete, the vulnerable memory will be lost. I mean, that's why, I mean, who has had a concussion and lost seconds of their lives before? You're like, I have no idea what happened before that. This is that moment. This is retrograde amnesia. Now, is it temporary? Maybe. Maybe you'll never get that back. You have a friend who got a concussion in the last baseball game that he ever played, and he actually got hit, right? He's running to first base, he collides with the first baseman, he flies in the air, he lands on the back of his head, helmet flies off, he goes boom, lands on the back of his head, gets up, this is before concussion protocols, gets up, stays on base, scores a run, comes in, and he says, what just happened? And he never, ever, that's his last hit ever, scored a run, doesn't remember any of it because he couldn't consolidate the memory. So, can be used for brain trauma. That's the example that I just gave. Alcohol and benzodiazepine, they can hinder memory consolidation. You've probably heard of this possibly, but blacking out because of alcohol, right? That's not because, you know, that's just what happens. It's when you drink enough alcohol, your brain is inhibited and you will not form memories because your brain has slowed down so much that it no longer has that ability to process stuff like that. Okay? Stimulants and stress hormones enhance memory consolidation. This is interesting, right? Stimulants, I mean, think about what those could possibly be. You know, for me, I'm addicted to caffeine. It's going to enhance my memory consolidation. You think of a higher end, you know, stimulants. You know, you go up to meth and cocaine and all that kind of stuff. Is it going to hinder your memory consolidation? No, it's not. Is it super highly addictive? Yes, it is. But this is interesting, right? Stress hormones. Okay, the release of cortisol in my body. Do I want to remember these stressful times? I don't necessarily want to. But is it beneficial for my survival to remember the stressful times? 100%. Again, we're dealing with ancient hardware in a modern world, okay? Then we have anterograde amnesia, the one that you really don't see. Loss of memory caused by the inability to store new memories. So we saw this with Clive Waring in the documentary, The Man with the 7-Second Memory. So this is called forward-acting amnesia. So loss of memory caused by the inability to store new memories. Now, where do we store, or what's the process of storing new memories? It goes through the hippocampus, okay? If the hippocampus is destroyed, you're not making any more new memories, unless it's a skill. You can still learn how to ride a bike, okay? So let's look at HM. So after HM died, we actually found out his real name. So you hide his information because of HIPAA, okay? But Henry Molaison. So Henry Gustav Molaison, the real HM. This man had surgery to stop his seizures, okay? His surgery consists of this: removing the amygdala and the hippocampus from both sides of his brain. Has it happened since? No. But this is the guy we get to study, okay? He is going to experience the exact same thing that Clive Waring experienced. Clive just had it happen naturally. He actually had surgery. So, Dr. William Beecher Scoville performed the experimental surgery, removing the hippocampus and amygdala on each side of Henry's brain. It was the first and last time that this surgical procedure was ever performed, but he was studied extensively. So Henry died on December 2nd, 2008, but his contribution to science continue. You can go see his brain, at UC San Diego. All right. So anterograde amnesia, what old Henry experienced. The two researchers that really dove into HM's case was Suzanne Corkin and Brenda Milner, and they both studied him extensively. So HM, what did they find out about him? He had good vocabulary and social skills, even though his ability to make new memories were gone. Normal intelligence still, good humor. He could still joke around with you in the present moment. So, and then, lived in the eternal present. He could trick you by holding things in the short-term memory for an hour or so, as long as he didn't let it go. Constantly thinking about it, okay? So if he switched his attention, it was gone. So Henry's case suggests that the hippocampus is not involved in most short-term memory tasks, but instead involved in encoding new memories for events and information and the transfer of those memories into long-term memory.